By the time Scream arrived in 1996, horror audiences watched these movies by the ton, and we also understood them. We knew how they worked. We knew the character archetypes. We knew the setting. We knew the tropes. We knew the rules. We knew how these stories were supposed to work, and that knowledge gave us a lot of confidence. Scream leans directly into that confidence. It assumes that we already know horror, as if we're capable of recognizing the structure and keeping up with it. But what it does with that assumption is very interesting, because this is a movie that knows that you know horror and then keeps shifting under that understanding. Hi, I'm Brandy, otherwise known as the Terrorific Lady, and welcome back to Retro Horror School, where we discuss, dissect, and analyze horror from the 1970s through the 2010s and talk about horror like it matters. Because it does. This week, we're looking at Scream not only as a meta horror film, but as a movie that builds a relationship with the viewer based on familiarity, recognition, and confidence, and then slowly destabilizing all three. So instead of asking what Scream says about horror, I want to focus on something a little more specific here. What is Wes Craven expecting from the viewer when we think we understand how everything works? The opening sequence tells you how this movie is going to operate based on how it positions you as the viewer. Casey Becker, she knows horror. She's familiar with it. She can answer the questions, for the most part. And she feels like she's on stable, familiar, solid ground. There's a sense of control here, a sense that this call, or the person that she's talking to, both belong to a structure that she can recognize. And so can we. But what is happening to her as a character is contained within that structure. It isn't paced or protected the way a movie would be. It unfolds in real time without those guardrails that separate horror from reality. And then there's Drew Barrymore. Her presence in this movie carries an expectation with it, because since she's there and you're seeing her within the first 12 minutes of the movie, there is no possible way that she is going to die. Not at all. Because that's how movies tend to treat big stars, or stars that are very recognizable. And Scream removes that expectation immediately. Rest in peace, Casey Becker. So right from the beginning, the film establishes something that never really goes away. You can recognize horror, you can understand it, and it's still not going to save you. And from there, Scream does something more important, because it gives you a sense of control. And the character of Randy becomes the clearest expression of that. He lays out the rules, he explains how things work, and turns horror into something that feels very structured and predictable. If you're a horror fan and you're familiar with the genre, you follow along with him and you feel aligned with him. He feels just like your guide into this world. Like, okay, so he's here. He understands horror movies. I understand horror movies. So cool, things are going to be awesome. No, Billy, the character of Billy, reinforces that feeling in a different way. Looking back, it seems almost a little too obvious that he is the killer. And that creates a sense that you figured something out early. You're like, aha, I figured it out. He's the killer. And it's really easy to kind of settle into that confidence and feel like you're one step ahead of the story. And because the characters do, for the most part, just not draw that same level of suspicion, the confidence deepens. Like, yep, it's 100% Billy. He did it on his own. It was him. At this point, you're interpreting the movie, applying what you know, and then trusting your knowledge as a horror fan. But that control never stays stable, because even as this movie builds your confidence, the tension doesn't disappear. The unease stays present, and the moment you just feel comfortable and, okay, I got this figured out. Now something shifts. Sydney locking herself inside that car is the perfect example. It's a moment that feels like she's taken control, a moment that feels contained, but then the moment she realizes that the killer has the keys, it breaks that sense of safety. What's interesting in moments that might even raise logical questions is like, okay, like how would this even happen? It doesn't really pull you out of the experience. If anything, it makes it even harder to predict what is coming next. And that unpredictability keeps you from fully relying on what you know. So you end up in this weird space where you understand the rules, but you're not going to be able to fully depend on them. This is where Scream takes a different approach than a meta horror movie like Wes Craven's New Nightmare. My video on Wes Craven's New Nightmare goes into more detail about how it positions the viewer. I'll be sure to leave a link to that up above and in the description. But where New Nightmare confronts us, Scream beckons us and invites us in. It assumes you're already part of the conversation, that you're already familiar with horror, that you're already intelligent enough to figure out what's going on or follow along with what's happening. That inclusion feels very natural. It makes the experience feel more engaging. It makes it feel more enjoyable. It makes it feel like you're a part of something. That sense of being in on it changes your position. Once you feel like you understand the movie starts changing the terms of that understanding. Brandy's rules on how to survive a horror movie are the quickest way that this movie tries to build that understanding. But even then, the rules do not behave the way that you expect them to. For instance, Sydney was a virgin, she had sex, and she survived. Brandy drank beer, got shot, he ended up surviving. Gail said that she would be right back, and she came back. At the same time, there are other characters that break the rules of surviving a horror movie and they die. So the rules exist, but they're not really that reliable. And that instability matters because knowing the structure still doesn't give you any kind of control over what is happening. That same pattern shows up in how the film handles the characters and the ending. Sydney does not fit the traditional final girl mold, but she survives. Gail operates outside that mold as well, and she's also a final girl. She survives too. So what you're bringing in from your experiences with past slashers doesn't really map clearly onto what is happening in this movie. And then there's the motive. It never really settles into something that is truly 100% satisfying, which creates this kind of friction. You're expecting to be like, oh, okay, well, there's no motive, so I feel better about this. Or, oh, there's a motive. This is why they did it. So, okay, I'm satisfied with this explanation. But because it's not really resolved, it creates this kind of friction. I have to ask, what do you think of the motive that Billy offered as to why they were doing what they did? Do you think it's an okay motive, or do you think it's really weak? Let me know. I would really like to know, because I always thought that motive was weak sauce. Even the ending moves quickly, resolving the situation without having any real kind of sense of control or stability. You get a resolution, but not the kind that just neatly closes everything off. So when you come back to the question, what is Wes Craven expecting from the viewer? The answer isn't to understand horror, because he expects that. Scream doesn't really reward that understanding, but it is interested in what's happening when you rely on it. The film gives you the rules, it lets you feel confident with them, and then keeps showing you how unstable that confidence really is. So if New Nightmare asks us what happens when we become too comfortable with horror, Scream asks what happens when we think we understand it, and that shift from comfort to confidence is where things start to get a lot less stable. I can't believe this, but this is the last official video of the Wes Craven retrospective series. The last official video where I talk about his movies. We're going to wrap up the Wes Craven retrospective series with a final cap-off video that talks about what Wes Craven really understood about horror before moving into an analysis of a movie that is a total nightmare and one that inspired the Silent Hill video game series. I am talking about Jacob's Ladder, which came out in 1990. It was a request, and I am so excited to delve into this movie because it's been a while since I've seen it. So it'll be like me watching it for the first time. My second first watch, as I like to call it. Yay! I'm excited. If you liked this video, please help Retro Horror School out by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Let us grow our classroom to infinite proportions. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Class is dismissed for now, but I'll see you next time. Bye!